Okay, we made it. We're back. Finally, it's Henry Weston's old mate. We've had 10 days of hiatus, or probably even a bit more than that, because of illness and just kind of schedules not matching up and a bit of downtime. So I'm Phil. I'm the host with Stuart Butler. Good evening, Stu.
Good evening, Phil. It has been a while, mate, hasn't it?
It has. It's taken me a little while just to get my head in the game to remember what we talked about last time. Had to have a little boost our viewing figures by watching the previous episode, just to make sure that I was caught up on what had happened.
I think it's a current front runner. I don't check the YouTube much, but I think it just overtook the first episode, got a few views, and I think the episode, maybe episode 7 and episode 8 are both running around sort of 24, 25, which may seem low to people, but that's 25 people who may have taken something away from it, in my view. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. Even just one person, if it just helps just that little bit.
And the audio podcasts are still picking up plenty. YouTube's had a little impact on them, but people who choose to listen without seeing our ugly mugs are hanging in there as well.
No, that's good. Although it's definitely worth tuning in because of the vast array of sportswear that you wear every episode, and it's different. And we've got a Whitecaps, which is a Canadian team, and I'm going to say Calgary.
It's Vancouver. Yeah, it's Vancouver Whitecaps. I think they're an MLS franchise based out of Canada, I guess. So, well, it must be MLS. I just picked this one up actually in the Adidas sale a couple of years ago. It was just something I like the look of. This has no. I've never visited Canada. This has no significance to my travels.
Well, annoyingly, I should be in Montreal right now, but COVID put pay to that. But never mind.
That is annoying.
That is annoying, but there we go. Right, okay, let's actually get down to business. First of all, I think we had some decent response to our pizza oil promotions last week, which were time round. That was very good.
Yeah, I mean, that was good. I heard from Elliot himself. He was all up for it. He was thankful for the promo. It really is good stuff. Support those local businesses.
Absolutely. And then this week we have actually got a clamour of people that want us to advertise their wares. So this week was it made me laugh because it's CBD oil, but it's specific golfers CBD oil. And I play golf once every 10 years, so I'm not going to get the benefit out of it. It says take 4 drops before you're first teeing off, and then again after hole 9. I was like, well, I metaphorically I'm going to have to do that in my head, but but no, actually, I've been using it twice a day, and I can already, probably a week or so now, but my sleep is much better than it was. I can definitely feel that.
Yeah, so let's give them. I actually, it's a little company. It is just simply Golfers CBD. If you find them on the internet, it's just literally at www.golferscbd.co.uk and at golferscbd on Twitter. But I picked up a tweet. I didn't actually follow them, but I picked up a little tweet, and they were running a 25-person trial of their new CBD oil. I have used CBD oil in the past, and I try to keep a little stock when the funds allow. So I reached out, and a man called Andrew Dixon got back in touch with me and said, because I'd written to him explaining that I was a greenkeeper as opposed to a golfer, and he said he would happily, or they would happily include me in their little trial. So he sent me a couple of vials, would you call them, bottles maybe, and we sent one up and over to Wales. This one that I've kept hold of is a coconut based product, but what I would fully agree with you there, Phil. For me, it's the sleep that I notice the benefits. I would take it in the morning if that didn't make the bottle last half as long, but it takes the edge off the anxiety. But when I am using it regularly, the sleep benefits of it are fantastic. It doesn't get you high, and you won't get addicted. So it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, cool. Anybody else out there that's listening that wants to sell their thing, we are prostitutes to the advertising game, and just get in touch and we'll be very happy to talk about your products.
Yeah, woolly hats we like because winter's coming.
Exactly. Okay, let's get serious. So let's remind people, because it has been a little while since we last spoke. So our last episode, we talked about your days in hospital. You had been admitted to QEQM, which is the hospital in Margate, and you had been quite profoundly unwell, physically unwell, not very safe in your own company. And you got admitted after kind of quite a lot of vomiting with obvious kind of blood in there. And this was the rock bottom. This is the point at which you admitted your addiction, and brought those close to you in on that secret, really. And so we talked quite a lot about the impact that had on relationships, and kind of the immediacy of that revelation, how that felt for you. There was no, understandably, there wasn't a great recollection from you in terms of timescales and things that were going on at that time. But there was I thought it was a really telling episode, and I think it was kind of both informative but frightening about how quickly things spiraled out of control for you. Yeah. Okay. Anything you want to add to that? We've had a good few days of reflection on that. Anything that you want to just add?
Well, a couple of points. If you listen to the audio podcast, I put a little interlude in that one just to explain, because going in the discussion of me and you discussed the, sort of my dad's reaction and sort of thoughts, and I'd sort of suggested that he wasn't overly impressed with me, and that was probably not unfair, because I was guessing a little bit, but to put the record straight for people watching this, they may not have picked it up on the YouTube video. I just added a bit of text on the video, but it was my dad. His reaction. He's not very good at dealing with things like that, and his reaction was he was very upset with himself, because he was shocked like everyone, but I guess being my dad, he was so amazed that he hadn't picked up on anything himself, or he'd been hoodwinked by me, as everyone had. But he was so surprised, and he was just really upset that it had got to the point it had with me. I guess as any parent would, they'd look back and think, why didn't I step in and help? He couldn't have, because I wasn't ready then. But that's just to put that to bed in this episode. But no, we used the word, rock bottom. That was my rock bottom. And we used the word scary, or I used the word scared, scary a few times in the last episode, because that's what it was. As we'll discuss now, we sort of get over that. But the coming few sort of days were obviously still very scary. And in sobriety, we'll discuss it shortly, I began to realise just how close I'd got to not necessarily dying, potentially worse, having to live with serious life-changing, I could have potentially been on the waiting list for, a new liver or something, couldn't I? And all the very nasty consequences that would have brought to me and, those closest to me, that would have had a huge knock-on effect to my day-to-day life, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so let's pick up almost exactly where we left off then. It's we've got to Christmas Eve, and you have seen the consultant in charge, or you've seen the doctors, the medical team looking after you, and they said, Stu, you can go home today.
Yeah.
Relief, or was there some anxiety or trepidation around kind of, they're letting me go?
No, massive relief. Possibly the fact that Christmas was the next day and I had a young daughter, and I wanted to get home. It may, but I had grown almost comfortable in hospital. You know, I was, let's be honest, I was enjoying some of the drugs they were giving me. You know, perhaps that's a bit of the addict talking again. But I'd made some friends actually in the beds around me. I'd been on a ward with 2 guys for the last 3 days and become quite, you know, friendly with them. And I was, you know, I was in my head, I was committed to sobriety and recovery, and obviously that was very easy in hospital. There was nowhere to get a beer. My food was brought to me. My medication that relieved the anxiety was brought to me. Yeah, so the thought of going home was I'd say probably 80% positive, but yeah, there would have been that 20% thinking, let's not go home and bugger this up. And also what was obviously nagging away is how is everybody going to react to me when I get out, you know, when I start having to see people. So that's where I was in my head.
Okay, yeah, so we'll come on to kind of friends and meeting up with people in the immediate aftermath. I think you're right. It sounds like hospital was a safe place, and while your commitment was very much real, it hadn't been tested while you're in hospital. So I guess, yeah, I completely understand that there would have been anxiety, reluctance, maybe some, you know, just an element of concern really about how it was actually going to go being kind of set free.
Yeah.
I kind of wondered about so getting home, and you see and you know, a lot of people's reference points, as ignorant as I am in asking this question, but the reference point around was there anything symbolic or ceremonial in terms of, you know, all the beers and everything out the cupboards and the fridge, and it's all going down the sink, and there's kind of like EastEnders music in the background, and was there any of that sort of kind of, yeah, symbolism is probably the right word, like I've had my last drink and it's all going down the sink?
No, Phil Mitchell had
What
already
a disappointment.
No, actually, no, we saw Phil Mitchell as we left hospital, but no, my wife had removed all alcohol, actually, every last drop. Not that we had a huge, you know, if you'd come to my house, sort of, even when I was drinking, there'd have been cans of lager and cider in the fridge and a few bottles of wine, but we don't have a spirit cabinet or anything, you know. The only spirits in the house would have been the sherry for the Christmas cake that I had been drinking, sadly, and the my hidden stash of vodka. So no, anything alcoholic had been moved to my in-laws, my wife's parents, at some point over the 7 days. So there was nothing in the house when we got home about 7 o'clock Christmas Eve. There was nothing in the house, but yeah.
So had you divulged where the hidden stash was, and that had been removed as well, or was there stuff lying around there?
Well, do you know, as it worked out, I'd pretty much, that day I went to hospital, it would have been a resupply day, so to speak. So I had about half a bottle of vodka stashed that I'd been trying to get into me every time my mum was out or for that day, and I had nothing else hidden because I was due to do a shop run that day. So the vodka there may have been a trace element left in the cycling bottle where it was hidden, but no. So I had told my wife, you know, where I used to stash things, but there was nothing there. I'm still, even nearly 4 years on, I'm still expecting to find the odd thing, but I never have. And we've sort of rearranged the whole house with the extension. So funnily, I don't think everything I ever had stashed got drunk. So I was an efficient alcoholic, you might like to say.
Okay, and I guess that's kind of quite good. I mean, I actually think that's fortunate, really, that you've not in that period of recovery, you know, I guess when you might be most tempted, that you stumble across a rogue bottle that hadn't been found. That's a good thing that's not happened.
Yeah, and I like I say, I really was surprised in the sort of the year afterwards that I didn't stumble across something, because I've always stashed stuff. I used to stash £20 notes for no other reason than just to for something to do, and I used to have the odd cache of alcohol, not hugely, but I thought I'd come across, or at least an empty bottle that I hid away. I never even come across an empty bottle. So again, efficiency was obviously the key.
Absolutely, yeah. So then Christmas Eve, you get home 7 o'clock. Are you just straight to bed, or are you up?
I wouldn't have been up long. Me and my wife would have had a chat, but we'd have also chatted about the nitty gritty in the 7 days I was in hospital. So nothing stands out at me. I still had these funny little or horrible ulcers and stuff in my mouth, so it wasn't even a case of coming home and having a sort of a proper decent feed, because we'd been in the hospital food, which actually wasn't that bad, to be fair. But no, I can't remember all that much, mate. Nothing stands out. It would have been a fairly early night, and the start of what was probably a few months of glorious sleep patterns compared to what I'd been experiencing for probably the last 15 years.
Okay. So so you wake up Christmas Day, what is it? Had you had plans that were then changed, or was everything shut down, or did you have plans and go through with them, or did you just shut the doors and the windows and just keep the outside world outside and just kind of get through what is, famously a kind of a period of joy and kind of happy clappy, and it's also the opposite for people as well.
Yeah, it used to be cider for breakfast for me. Well, not for breakfast, but I always used to have a bit of a ceremonial cider when I made the sort of mid-morning canapes, if we were hosted, or that we. No, to answer your question, Phil, Christmas was planned at my in-laws. My wife's brother was down visiting. They'd arrived possibly the 23rd with their 3 children. So we just ran with that plan, and we'd have got over there fairly early. And there was a fair few people in the house, so there would have been us 3, 2 in-laws, 5 of them plus so there'd have been another 6 of them. So there was a fairly busy house, but like I said to you off air, that probably helped, because 4 kids, the eldest one would have been 6 that Christmas, so it was a busy, noisy house, and there was no alcohol really until we sat down for dinner, and no one went bonkers. There was no shots of tequila or anything going on, and it passed like a fairly normal Christmas Day, which it was for everyone else. I'd obviously just come out of a pretty tricky situation, but we didn't not discuss my situation, but I didn't discuss it with anyone. Everyone around, all the grown-ups were aware of what was going on. Certainly my wife's parents, she'd been in discussions with them for sort of months about what was going on with me. Everyone was, worried and trying to work out what I was up to. But my wife's brother and his partner would have known, they'd have been informed. But we had a very pleasant Christmas, actually.
So I'm kind of intrigued about, previously, by your own admission, you would have to be dragged kicking and screaming to a social event. Was there any kicking and screaming for this, or was there any kind of like, I just don't want to do it, or was it more a case of I can't be left alone and Mrs. Butler's going there, so I'm going?
I don't remember being overly anxious, and I think it was the best. Yeah, I couldn't have been left alone, and I wasn't going to. I guess I could have been dropped off at my parents to be basically supervised, if I really felt. But everyone had been supportive in that week. Really supportive. Everyone had come to see me, and I'd had text messages saying, well done, we can move forward now. So for me not to then turn up to Christmas dinner, I think would have been a bit of an early sort of kick in the bollocks to everyone who'd been really very supportive of me being really rather a twat.
Okay. So you just mentioned there was alcohol at the table, and was there any? I don't want to delve into kind of family politics or anything, but was there any disgruntlement on your part? Those people sat around having a drink, and you're in your state, and they're having that. Was there any of that with you, or is it just like this now?
No, I don't think there was, and I don't. I'd have to ask my wife. I wouldn't be surprised if I was asked if I was comfortable with it, alcohol, and I would have said yes, because it's it's something I would have had to get on with, and I would rather have not gone than people not drink, but I don't remember any feelings of, everyone's having a good time and I'm not. I mean, those feelings started to come probably 2 years into sobriety for me, maybe a year and a half. We'll discuss those in future podcasts. But that day, no, I'd have been very aware of all the alcohol. Yeah. And I was probably in the back of my mind thinking everyone else is very aware that I'm very aware.
Yeah, and everyone watching your well, maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but I guess the paranoia would be they're watching to see whether I'm going to sneak off for an extra long wee, or just where's Stu gone? Yeah, where's that bottle of sherry gone? Yeah, okay. I do wonder whether the discharge on Christmas Eve and in Christmas Day, obviously the very next day, whether that made the first Christmas, whether that was just helpful just to get that out the way straight away, because the rawness of your admission and the terrifying nature of it all, like you said, you had been scared, whether that was helpful. I guess what I'm getting at, I think, is a lot of people through significant events, whether it's bereavement or those sorts of things, say the first of everything is the hardest, whether it's the first Christmas, first birthday, anniversary of whatever. And I guess first Christmas is like day one.
Yeah, and I think had my predicament occurred sort of, let's say, the middle of the year, June, July, and then I was 6 months down, say I'd stayed sober for the first 6 months and Christmas had come along, I would imagine it would have been a lot harder, because subsequent Christmases have been very hard. Last Christmas being the hardest one. I don't know why. Boris locked us down. That's not an excuse. But I just remember sort of chatting to both my brothers over the FaceTime and sort of the WhatsApp group. There's my brother in Dubai at a massive open-air nightclub, having a good time, and my middle brother in Germany with a friend of ours was out there with him, and they were having a good old sort of German booze up. And it really hit me that I didn't want to physically put alcohol in my body, but I wanted to be in that social situation, enjoying a drink.
Yeah.
And that was sort of pretty much 3 years into sobriety. And last Christmas really did knock me sideways. And I was in a foul mood for 2 or 3 hours last Christmas Day.
Yeah, no, I can kind of see it's not necessary. It might not necessarily have been the alcohol, but because we were all locked down, you've lost your social circle, and the alcohol kind of plays into that, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess moving further on as well, if I remember rightly, you're a February birthday as well, is that right? So again,
mid-February, yeah.
So a first birthday in sobriety, not long after your discharge from hospital, is again not a badly timed position to be in.
Yeah, we wouldn't have done anything significant. We may have gone again. Well, none of us will remember. If we did anything, it probably would have been a curry takeaway at home. I didn't go to the pub for a good 6 months, really. I did a few times when I had to, and stayed for an hour at the most. I just didn't do it. I just avoided that situation.
Yeah. Okay, understandably. And then from the podcast, the last podcast, you mentioned that the first AA meeting was booked in for Boxing Day.
Yeah, so I'd been visited by a good friend of my youngest brother's who'd been in or was in the program, still is, I assume. Haven't texted him for a while, and he'd basically offered to show me the way of the AA. It sounds like a Star Wars and the Jedi, but so yeah, I was booked in. He said that there's a really good meeting in Tankerton, busy meeting, really good meeting. It just so happens it's Boxing Day. That's just the way it fell. Do you want to come? And I did want to go, but me being me, I don't like travelling. I didn't want to go to Tankerton, but like we said in the previous episode, I wanted to show people that I was making the effort. So I made the effort. I, went to a 7 o'clock meeting in Tankerton in December. It's bloody cold and bloody dark when you get picked up. But it was a fantastic meeting, busy. I just remember everyone, I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea what an AA meeting would involve. You see the movies, it's a ring of chairs in anything from a old school gym to a posh, hotel. They in all settings. But it wasn't a ring of chairs. It was a parish community centre meeting, just in a room full of chairs. And there must have been 35, 40 people there. And it was a chaired meeting. I won't go into great detail, but AA meetings, they vary. They vary from a chaired meeting where someone shares their story to a big book study that is just a study group every week. And, the meetings are what they are. If a Monday meeting is a chaired meeting, it's a chaired meeting every Monday at that location. And if you want to go to a big book meeting, that's somewhere else. But this was a chaired meeting, and the gentleman who shared his story of nigh on 30 years sobriety, that was fantastic. And everyone wanted to shake my hand. Obviously, I was introduced as a new guy, and no one had ever seen me before, which gave that away anyway. But it was just a very, very positive. And in that 1 hour that the meeting went on for, my initial, I heard so much in the gentleman's share that just resonated with me, behaviour types, and I was just like, wow. And this room is full of, people like me, and they're all smiling. Yeah.
Okay. So I wonder whether there's, because I don't know, again, my ignorance in this area is well documented through our podcasts, but I do wonder whether the impact of the very first, we always say that, they always say it takes 7 seconds to make a first impression, whether that's good or bad. And I think your first impression walking through that door will tell you whether you're going to get on with this or not. And I think, and then the rest, any time after those 7 seconds will just confirm what you've already thought.
Yeah.
And I think if it's a warm welcome with people who are smiling and welcoming you and ready to help you, and then you've got a guy with 30 years on the clock of sobriety, it's like it's kind of scattered with hope and some inspiration as well around this can be done. It might well be hard, but
yeah,
it really can be done. Okay. And then, so did you share anything on that night? Did you introduce yourself at all, or?
I can't remember. If I didn't share that night, I certainly did. I went to a meeting a couple of days later, more local in my hometown, really. And I definitely shared that night. I think I might have said a few words, but because the general format of the meeting is sort of the chair will use 25 to 30 minutes of the hour to share their story, and then that 20 minutes will be opened up to share and reflect on, well, anything really. And I can't remember if I said anything, but listening to, so many people sharing their thoughts on the chair, and you just hear little snippets, of so many things, and it just that reinforced a lot of the positives. There was that positive reinforcement for me. And it's funny because I went to a few meetings. I went to so many different meetings in the first 2 or 3 months of sobriety AA meetings, and I went to 3 that I'd have walked out of in 3 minutes if they hadn't only been 5 or 6 of us. Like you just explained about. There was a few meetings I went to, and almost before I've sat down, I thought this isn't going to be for me. But I'm through the door, and there might be people in here as new as I am to recovery. There might still be someone in here who I can help, even if I'm pretty sure I'm not coming back next week. I'd better hang around for this week.
That's interesting, taking on a responsibility for not just yourself, but recognizing in that moment that somebody might be relying on your smiley face to help through that session. There's kind of quite a big leap, isn't it, from somebody in the space of a few weeks being somebody who's introspective, selfish, called out, to somebody who's recognizing the weight of responsibility for a complete stranger.
Yeah, it's that. I'm sure it's not just an AA thing. It'd be great if it was just a human thing. It's that element of giving back, giving away what's been given to you for nothing by others. And that will sound a bit preachy. It will sound a bit straight from the big book. But I mean, it is. I'd already learned that. I tried to adopt some practices that were, within the steps. I hadn't started the 12 steps at this point. But something, my first time, I didn't have a sponsor, but what I had been advised was to write a daily gratitude list. Wake up in the morning and write a short list of what you were grateful for from yesterday and what you hope to be grateful for today. But what I had picked up, very early on, and it did resonate with me, because I like to think I've got a half decent heart when I'm sober and my brain's all right. And that theory of, yes, I might not enjoy this hour. I might not be in the best of moods, but I could be of benefit. Me just being here might be enough to keep that someone else in the room, because the minute I leave the room, if someone else is a bit 50-50 sitting on the fence and they follow me and walk around the corner and have a drink, I would never know because I'm gone. But I'd certainly started to pick up some things, and that was all through AA. I could have read it in a book that wasn't about AA, I'm sure, but I wouldn't have, because I wouldn't have read the book.
Okay, so go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so that was already a very positive, positive thing that I'd picked up from those very early AA meetings.
Okay. And how many meetings do you think you went to in that first week, maybe first 2 weeks?
I started, let's say in the first 3 months, I used to go to that Tankerton one every couple of weeks. And I used to do 3 local ones, sometimes a 4th. So I used to do 3 in Deal, a Sunday one that was what we'd have called my home group. And then I used to do a Tuesday and a Thursday. And then they got a bit funny, so I started doing a Sunday in Deal, and then I started doing Monday and Wednesday in Dover. That was a much better. That was another chair. I'd gone to a couple of study groups that I didn't get on with, but the chaired meetings I found really helpful. And there was 2 of those in the same location in Dover, and being where I'm in Kingsdown, it's 10-minute drive. So I was attending 3 every week for a period of 6 to 8 months, sometimes 4, all in the evenings.
Okay, so when you said that you had gone to a couple and they'd got a bit funny, do you mind? Was they you mind if I ask why they were a bit funny?
One of them, the guy who was, I don't know what they call him. He was basically, he was just in charge of that meeting. In service, you can do service by acting as the meeting coordinator. You can make the cups of coffee, put the chairs out. There's designated positions. Obviously, the top position being the responsible one who organises the meeting, and then he has a secretary. But I'd been in one meeting 2 minutes, and the guy wanted to exchange numbers, which I was always a bit wary of. I don't know why, because it's the thing to do. Again, I shouldn't have been thinking about myself, really. I should have been thinking about others. But he was just too nice. He wanted to take me for curry the minute the meeting finished. He wanted to do this. He phoned me every day for 6 days, and I just never went. He was trying to do what he thought AA was to him. Yeah. And then the other meeting, a woman kept turning up drunk, which wasn't a problem to me, actually, because I thought that was going to happen in quite a few meetings. That's what AA is for. But the host of that meeting just didn't do it. They just used to have stand-up shouting matches. And after the third week of that, I just thought my time will be, this is of no benefit to it. It wasn't being selfish. I was just like, this is of no benefit to anyone. So yeah. I then asked around and got pointed in the direction of the Monday meeting in Dover, which was fantastic. Very similar to the Tankerton meeting. Yeah.
Okay. No. Yeah. Like we say, you've kind of there is a flip for you in terms of having an outward responsibility, but you do still have to balance that with a hefty kind of level of selfishness, because you're trying to get yourself into a position to live a long life.
Yeah. And that will be with any form of recovery, be it gambling, alcohol, drugs, or whatever. If you attend any of these meetings, one of the first things that is drilled into you is that you must be here for yourself first. I was at an AA meeting. In my head, I thought, I'm going because I want to make amends to my wife and my daughter and my parents and my friends, and I will get some great benefits from it myself. But it was very soon drilled into me that I needed to get sober for me first, and if I could get sober for me and into recovery for me, then everyone around me will benefit from that. And they were almost at the point of saying, if you're here for someone else, there's not much point, because it won't work in the long run. Don't be here because you've been sent here.
Oh, that's really interesting. But yeah, you see, it clearly makes sense. The commitment's got to be binding for you, hasn't it? Okay, so we do intend to do an episode or a couple of episodes talking about AA, just because you've talked about black books, so the big book even, or those.
It's a blue book. Yeah, the big book. It's blue, but yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me.
We'll go through and explain some of that in another episode, and get stuck into it. The frequency in those first couple of weeks and months of your attendance, is that the recommended thing, or is that just something that you like, actually, this is doing me good, so I'm going to go?
Well, I mean, the hardcore recommendation for AA is, if you are, is to do 90 meetings in 90 days. That is what they would recommend. It's not possible. Anything is possible. But I mean, if you're in a position where, I heard very vivid stories of people who, would literally had to they talk about, if one day at a time, if you don't drink today, you can't get drunk, and just stay sober today. There were people in these meetings who had lived periods of their life where they were going 1 second at a time, 5 seconds at a time, through their addiction. I must have been at that point during my active addiction, because I couldn't stop drinking. But in recovery, there was, those rooms to people who don't have support networks, support bubbles, families who are sticking by them, those rooms are the safest place. A lot of them might be in sheltered accommodation with other people with similar addictions who maybe aren't battling them quite so well. So there might be the guy next door swigging on the vodka bottle, knocking on your door, offering it to you. You know, the rooms are safe for a lot of these people, or they're safe for everyone. But
yeah. So my mind has just kind of been blown a little bit, and I don't know what I was thinking in expectation of an AA meeting. But for you to describe it in the way that you have during this episode is kind of busted a load of myths around it. And I think there's somebody was talking about the film Fight Club the other week with me, and there is famously a number of scenes in there where characters turn up there, and it just seems like such a vulnerable, dirty, emasculating kind of experience for everybody there, and they're there because they feel that they have to be rather than anything else. And you just kind of flip that on its head, that people were welcoming, smiley, they wanted to shake your hand, they were happy for you to be there. It's just kind of just a safe place, a really safe place. And I think that's I don't know why, that's what films and TV do to you, don't they? They set a picture that's not really real life, and I should know better. That's really useful, and like we say, we'll delve into that a little bit more in another episode. During this period, then, the other question that I wanted to ask was, so all those close to you, so parents, siblings, and the in-laws and that sort of stuff, at what point did you start making it known or telling people outside your family circle, and what were their reactions like?
Well, reactions. Well, let's answer the first bit first. Pretty much straight away. When I got home, once Christmas Day was done with the family, possibly Boxing Day. I don't recall what we did Boxing Day, but I expect it would have been family orientated again. And then I settled into a period of bed rest, really. It was more sofa rest. I didn't return to work for a few weeks, but I would have been messaging. My closest friends I think already knew. Possibly I might have even asked my brothers to tell them. But people who I'd be putting the word out. A few people checked in with me that they'd heard that I wasn't doing so great. So those who checked in with me, I was very honest and open. A few people came to visit. So to answer the second part of the question, with people's reactions, amazement at my volume of vodka consumption, and how quickly, I guess, because we'd had our daughter in the end of June, and this was happening in December, January. We're talking January now, people coming to visit. So we wouldn't have seen all that many people anyway, because we had a newborn. After that, yourself, but after that initial month where everyone comes around, and I think you said eats your fucking biscuits.
Yeah.
And then that drops off, and you kind of get left to find out how to be a parent. My wife had to do a lot of that on her own, but I wouldn't have seen it. We wouldn't have been able to attend many functions that were on, because we had the newborn. So it was maybe a bit of a perfect storm again. People wouldn't have seen me because I had a newborn. So that period when they did see me 6 months later, I wasn't the tired new dad. I was the nearly dead alcoholic. And it was, I think it's when you say to, someone says to you, how much were you drinking at your worst? And you say like, well, for the last 8 months, I was drinking a litre of vodka on top of 4 cans of cider, and if there was a half bottle of red wine in the cupboard that I thought my wife had forgotten about, that would get drunk first. And if it was a bottle of wine, it was Christmas at work, I'd have 10 of them, and blah blah blah. And they were just amazed, really. I mean, everyone knew I liked to drink, and everyone knew I could have a can of Stella in the morning. When we used to go for breakfast on the pier, I'd be the idiot drinking Stella with breakfast. But they were still amazed, and sad, and and the reaction was, you know, we wish we could have helped, which used to hurt me because so many people tried to help me. We've said it, you know, and I just had to say to everyone, you know, my best friend Cookie, he said, I thought he had his suspicions, and I said, yeah, but if you'd have phoned me up, Cookie, and said, I know you're drinking too much, Stu, and I want you to stop. I'm coming down and we're going to sort this out. I'd have just palmed him off. I'd have fobbed him off and said the phone call would have been wasted on me, mate. There was nothing anyone could have done.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then I guess interesting, like fast forwarding like a good number of years, you started then, like there was nothing on social media from you for quite some time.
No.
All of a sudden, kind of, you've decided that you're going to start kind of diarising and sharing your experience, which then I guess brought quite a few other people like me into kind of the discussion around. Didn't even know, you know, we'd been kind of distant acquaintances for a number of years, and then all of a sudden you kind of, you just don't know what's going on behind closed doors, do you really?
No, I mean, plenty of people, you know, I started the blog on the 1st of January this year, 2021, but plenty of people knew, you know, everyone local knows I'm a recovering alcoholic, and if you follow my Twitter back probably the last couple of years, there might have been the odd retweet from me with regards. I might have retweeted something about recovery or alcoholism, but I wouldn't have been involved in any online discussions. Anyone who'd asked, I was happy to tell them, you know, when I was regularly attending AA. But I didn't seek out, or I didn't use my social media to promote my recovery up until this year, really. No.
Yeah. Okay, and I think one of the final question, because we've kind of hit time, was so I was going to ask if in this early period whether there are any temptations, but it feels like actually the determination and the focus with AA and the family around you is probably, and the freshness of the experience with hospital, there probably wasn't. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100% fair. And I'll use the word scared again. I was still scared because my mind was still hazy with anxiety, but it was a lot less hazy than being pissed all the time. I was so aware now of what I could have done to some of my internal organs, and my little daughter as well. You know, my wife, we've said before, my wife was a huge concern, you know, and I love and cherish her, and I want to, but she can look after herself. If I'd have dropped down dead, she would have carried on and she'd have looked up. But I was now so aware that I'd nearly left my little 6-month-old child without a dad.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to be a half decent one now, because I'd not been the best one for the first bit. You know, I'm smiling, I'm putting a brave face on it, because you don't want to cry on the video, do you? But that's what hit home. Had I been, I've said again, don't know if we've said it on this podcast, had I been a single man in 2017, I'd have still ended up in hospital, but I'm pretty damn sure I'd have gone out. I'd still be in recovery, but I'd have had the odd hiccup. I'd have had a drink again, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Okay. Seems like a good place to stop for now. And I think we'll start focusing our attention really on kind of the first 6 months, or 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, those sorts of things as we move into the next episodes, because I guess there will be we've used the analogy quite often before, but a bit of a roller coaster, because it won't all be easy, fully determined, fully committed, no temptations. And I guess that we can start unpicking and delving into some of those as well. So but yeah, as for tonight, thank you very much for kind of enlightening me and busting some myths. Let's give a little shout again to the Golfers CBD oil.
Don't forget, and check out, hit Elliot up again. This is my personal favourite, the Pineapple Ghost. It's bloody lethal, but go to the website. It will be around here somewhere when you watch on YouTube. Have a check that out.
Elliot Eastwick's
World famous hot sauce.
hot sauce. That's it. Okay, so anyone who's got any questions or anything that they want us to cover as well as we move into this next phase, it's hwomthepod@gmail.com. I remembered that time, or at Stu Butts on Twitter. But yeah, no, it's been good catching up. It's felt like a long time. So glad we were able to do that. And I will catch you on the next one, Stu.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Brilliant.